Emperor Kethvol's crystalline claws scraped against the obsidian throne as he studied the holographic display floating before him. The rebellion in the Outer Rim had grown beyond mere inconvenience. 3 star systems had already fallen to. The insurgents and his naval commanders reported losses that made his secondary hearts pound with rage. General Vosikar. The Emperor's voice resonated through the vast throne chamber, each word dripping with barely contained fury. Explain to me how a handful of primitive colonies managed to destroy an entire battle fleet. General Vosikar, a veteran of 17 conquest campaigns, kept his 4 eyes fixed on the floor. His scaled hide bore the scars of countless battles, but none had prepared him for this particular humiliation. Your Magnificence, the rebels have acquired weapons technology that exceeds our projections. Their ships move with unprecedented agility, and their fighters. Excuses. Kethvol's tail lashed, sending sparks across the chamber floor. I want results. You have 72 standard cycles to deliver a force capable of crushing this rebellion permanently. Not containment, not suppression, complete annihilation. The general's mandibles clicked nervously. The timeline was impossible with conventional forces, and both beings knew it. The rebellion had somehow acquired ships that could outmaneuver, Imperial dreadnoughts while delivering devastating firepower. More troubling still, their pilots seemed to possess an almost supernatural ability to anticipate Imperial battle tactics. Your Magnificence, Voskar ventured carefully, might I suggest we consider unconventional resources? Emperor Kethvol's 6 eyes narrowed to slits. Elaborate. The slave markets of Grydian Prime recently acquired specimens from a previously unknown species. Humans, they call themselves. The traders claim these creatures possess unusual combat instincts and a disturbing tendency toward creative violence. Additionally, their homeworld's destruction left behind certain artifacts. The Emperor leaned forward, his interest piqued, despite his rage. What manner of artifacts? A single vessel survived the planetary bombardment. The salvage crews classify it as a light cruiser, but preliminary scans suggest technology configurations that don't match any known design principles. The humans refuse to discuss its capabilities, even under enhanced interrogation. Kethvol's laugh was like breaking glass. You propose to arm slaves with their own weapons and hope they'll fight for the empire that destroyed their world? Not. Arm them, Your Magnificence. Direct them. Humans appear to respond to proper motivation, and if the ship proves as dangerous as the salvage reports suggest, we need only point it at our enemies. The Emperor studied the tactical display again, watching red indicators spread across once secure Imperial territory. The rebellion was growing bolder, striking deeper into core worlds. Traditional suppression had failed, and his admiralty was quietly suggesting negotiation, a word that made his very essence recoil. 72 cycles, General. Acquire these humans and their vessel. If they fail to produce results, I'll use their homeworld's ashes to fertilize my gardens. If you fail... The Emperor's claws extended fully, gleaming in the chamber's crimson light. General Vosikar bowed low, already calculating the logistics of his impossible task. As he departed the throne chamber, he couldn't shake the memory of the salvage crew's reports. The human ship had been found drifting in the debris field of their destroyed planet, its hull scarred by weapons fire, but its systems somehow still operational. More unsettling were the energy readings, power signatures that spiked beyond measurement. Whenever the vessel's surviving crew members approached their own ship, the humans claimed it was merely a patrol vessel, but their eyes held secrets that made even seasoned interrogators uncomfortable. Whatever these creatures were hiding, Vosikar would soon discover whether it could save both the rebellion's destruction and his own life. The slave markets of Grydian Prime reeked of desperation and disinfectant. General Voskar moved through the cramped corridors with 2 Imperial guards flanking him, their energy weapons visible as a warning to the various species crowded into holding cells. The air recycling system struggled against the mixture of alien pheromones and fear sweat. "These are your humans?" Voskar studied the group of 23 beings huddled in cell block 7. They appeared remarkably similar to the Zarathi in basic body structure, but something in their movements suggested predatory awareness that put him on edge. Slave Master. Tariq, a blob-like creature whose species Voskar couldn't identify, manipulated his translation device with tentacle fingers. "Prime specimens, General, survived the destruction of their home world, adapted to imprisonment faster than most species. Watch their eyes. They're always calculating." Indeed, the humans were studying their visitors with unsettling intensity. Unlike most enslaved species, who either cowered or raged, these creatures seemed to be cataloging weaknesses and measuring distances. Their leader, a female with silver-streaked hair and scars across her left cheek, stepped forward. "You're not here for manual labor," she said, her voice carrying an accent that the translator struggled to interpret. "Military bearing, fresh, uniform, guards positioned for rapid response rather than intimidation." "You want soldiers?" Vosakar's tail twitched with surprise. "You presume much for chattel." "Captain Raven Cordell, formerly of the Terran Colonial Defense Force." The human's smile held no warmth. "And your general something or other, probably facing a military problem that conventional forces can't solve. Otherwise, you wouldn't be shopping in a slave market." "The audacity of this creature," one guard began, but Vosakar raised a claw for silence. "Continue, Captain Cordell. You want my ship. That's the only reason we're still alive. Your people have been trying to crack our systems for months without success." Cordell gestured toward her companions. "These are my crew. Engineers, pilots, weapons specialists, the best Terra ever produced, and the only survivors of the massacre of New Geneva." The general accessed his datapad, reviewing intelligence. Reports. The human homeworld's destruction had been thorough. Orbital bombardment had reduced the planet's surface to molten glass, but somehow this single vessel had escaped the annihilation fleet. "Your ship is classified as a light cruiser. Explain its survival when your entire fleet was eliminated." Cordell's expression hardened. "The Phantom's Edge isn't classified correctly in your databases. She's a deep space reconnaissance vessel designed for extended operations behind enemy lines. Her defensive systems and stealth capabilities were cutting edge. Yet she was captured." "We weren't captured," interrupted another human, a young male with cybernetic implants along his skull. "We surrendered to prevent orbital strikes on civilian evacuation ships. Bought time for 3 million refugees to reach the jump points." Vosakar studied the datapad again. The evacuation had indeed succeeded, despite Imperial tactical doctrine calling for immediate civilian elimination. These humans had sacrificed their freedom for non-combatants, a decision that defied logical military thinking. "I offer a bargain," the general announced. "Serve the Empire in crushing a rebellion, and your crew survives. Refuse, and you'll spend your remaining years in the mining colonies of Bracken the Four." Captain Cordell laughed, a sound that somehow conveyed both amusement and threat. "Wrong leverage, General. You need us more than we need survival. The rebellion you're fighting, they've been studying human tactical doctrine transmitted from our refugee ships. Every engagement, they grow. Stronger." The general's scales shifted color, a sign of agitation he couldn't suppress. Intelligence reports had indeed noted tactical innovations among rebel forces that defied established patterns. "What do you propose?" "Partnership, not slavery. My crew operates the Phantom's Edge with full autonomy during combat operations. No Imperial overrides, no monitoring systems installed on our vessel. In exchange, we'll help end your rebellion. Our way." Voskar's guards tensed, but he found himself intrigued despite protocol. And what guarantee do I have of your loyalty? Cordell's smile turned predatory. General, we watched our world burn. We've got nowhere to run and nothing left to lose. That makes us the most dangerous kind of ally, the kind with nothing left but the mission. As alarms suddenly echoed through the facility, announcing a rebel attack on the station's outer defensive ring, Voskar realized his 72 cycles had just become considerably shorter. The docking bay that housed the Phantom's Edge fell, silent as Captain Cordell and her crew approached their vessel for the first time in 8 months. General Voskar observed from the observation deck, flanking by his technical advisors and a full security detail. The human ship appeared unremarkable, matte black hull, angular design that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the bay's harsh lighting. Scans still show no active power signatures, reported Chief Technician Molox, his insectoid mandibles clicking nervously. Whatever energy source it uses remains undetectable by our sensors. Voskar watched as Captain Cordell placed her palm against a section of hull that looked identical to every other section. The ship's response was immediate and dramatic. Blue-white energy cascaded across the vessel's surface in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The very air in the docking bay began to hum with power. Fascinating, whispered Dr. Nethys, the expedition's xenobiologist. The ship appears to be responding to biological markers unique to its crew. Perhaps some form of genetic lock? Below, the human crew moved with practiced efficiency toward various access points that hadn't been visible moments before. Each crew member's touch activated additional systems until the entire vessel pulsed with barely contained energy. Lieutenant Kai Brennan, the cybernetically enhanced engineer, paused at the ship's primary access port. "She's been sleeping," he called out to his captain. "Power core was in minimal hibernation mode. She's angry about being confined." "Ships don't experience emotions," Voskar muttered, but his scales were already shifting to the gray hue of uncertainty. The Phantom's Edge began to levitate, rising 3 meters off the docking bay floor without any visible means of propulsion. The energy readings on every Imperial sensor array spiked beyond measurement before the instruments simply shut down to prevent overload. Captain Cordell's voice carried clearly across the bay's communication system. "General, you might want to clear the observation deck. The Edge doesn't like being watched by strangers during startup sequences." As if responding to her words, every piece of Imperial monitoring equipment in the vicinity began sparking and smoking. The temperature in the bay dropped 10 degrees in as many seconds, and several of Voskar's advisors reported sudden dizzy spells. What manner of propulsion system creates spatial distortion fields? Chief Technician Molox's voice carried genuine fear as his instruments registered impossible readings. Through the observation deck's reinforced windows, they watched the human crew disappear into their vessel. Moments later, the ship's external appearance began to change. Hull plates shifted and reformed. Weapon ports became visible where none had existed before, and strange protrusions extended from the ship's spine like the dorsal fins of some deep-ocean predator. "The structural modifications weren't present in our previous scans," Dr. Nethys observed, her multiple arms frantically operating recording devices. "The ship is literally reshaping itself." General Voskar's communication device crackled to life with Captain Cordell's voice. "General, we're ready for departure. I trust you have target coordinates for these rebels." "Captain, what exactly is your vessel's classification? Our databases indicate light cruiser specifications, but..." The Phantom's Edge was designed as humanity's first deep strike reconnaissance vessel. Her mission profile required operating alone in hostile territory for extended periods, which meant she needed to be adaptable. Cordell's tone carried a hint of pride mixed with something darker. "She's also the last ship built with Terra's most advanced AI integration protocols." The implications of that statement sent cold dread through Voskar's secondary hearts. AI integration of the level suggested by the ship's responses was theoretically possible but had been banned by most civilized species after the machine wars of the previous millennium. You're telling me this vessel possesses artificial intelligence? Not. Artificial intelligence, General. Hybrid intelligence. The Edge thinks with a combination of quantum processing and organic neural networks grown from her crew's genetic material. She knows us, understands us, and fights for us because we're literally part of her consciousness. The ship pulsed again, and this time every Imperial vessel in the docking bay registered the same impossible energy signature. Whatever the humans had created, it defied everything the Empire understood about spacecraft design and operation. Coordinates. Uploading now, Vossakar managed, his voice betraying none of his growing apprehension. The rebel stronghold is located in the Kepler Nebula, heavily fortified and defended by converted mining platforms. Understood. Phantom's Edge departing in 60 seconds. General, you might want to evacuate the docking bay. As Imperial personnel scrambled for emergency exits, Vossakar realized he might have just unleashed something far more dangerous than the rebellion he'd been ordered to crush. The Kepler Nebula stretched across 3 light-years of space, its ionized gases creating a natural barrier against conventional sensors. Rebel forces had established their stronghold deep within the nebula's heart, using the environmental interference to mask their operations from Imperial detection arrays. General Vossakar monitored the mission from the command deck of his flagship, the dreadnought Inexorable Will. 3 full battle groups accompanied the operation, 67 Imperial vessels maintaining position at the nebula's edge, while the Phantom's Edge proceeded alone into the stellar maelstrom. Telemetry from the human vessel remains intermittent, reported Navigation Officer Kenth, her scaled hands dancing across sensor controls. The nebula's interference makes tracking their exact position impossible. What about their communication array? Captain Cordell maintains contact every 15 minutes, as agreed. Her last transmission reported successful penetration of the outer defensive perimeter. Vossakar studied the tactical display, noting the positions of known rebel installations. Intelligence suggested the enemy had converted 17 asteroid mining platforms into fortress weapons, each capable of destroying Imperial cruisers. The rebel fleet included over 200 vessels of various classes, many equipped with the mysterious new weapons technology that had proven so effective against Imperial forces. General? Captain Cordell's voice crackled through the communication system, distorted by nebular interference. We've located the primary rebel command station. The intelligence reports were conservative, elaborate. They've got at least 400 vessels here, not 200. And General, some of these ships are displaying human tactical modifications. The refugees who escaped Terra have been sharing more than just survival techniques. Vossakar's claws extended involuntarily. If human military doctrine was being actively distributed among rebel forces, the insurgency's capabilities would continue expanding exponentially. Can your vessel handle those numbers alone? The Edge wasn't designed for direct confrontation. With entire fleets, we're a reconnaissance vessel, remember? But... Cordell's voice carried a note that made Vossakar's scales shift color. She's been analyzing rebel movement patterns for the past 2 hours. Their coordination is impressive, but they're still thinking like miners and merchants playing at being soldiers. Meaning, they've concentrated their forces around static, defensive positions instead of maintaining mobile response capabilities. Classic mistake for converted civilian personnel. Through the tactical display, Vossakar watched as new contact signatures began appearing deep within the nebula. The Phantom's Edge was somehow painting targets that Imperial sensors couldn't detect. 17 major installations and hundreds of smaller vessels. Beginning engagement, Cordell reported, her voice now carrying the flat tone of a combat commander. The Edge is enthusiastic about this target environment. What happened next defied every principle of space warfare that General Vossakar had learned in 40 years of military service. The human vessel seemed to fracture into multiple energy signatures appearing simultaneously at different locations throughout the rebel fleet. Explosions began cascading across the nebula as rebel vessels found their defensive systems failing against weapons that didn't appear on any targeting display. How is she achieving multiple target engagement across such distances? Officer Kenth's voice carried genuine bewilderment. Unknown, Voskar replied, but his attention was fixed on power readings that continued spiking beyond measurement. The Phantom's Edge wasn't just attacking multiple targets. She was somehow existing in multiple locations simultaneously. General, Cordell's transmission came through clearly despite the chaos. The rebels are attempting to evacuate their command personnel. Some of these people are human refugees from Terra, requesting permission to offer quarter to non-combatants. The request violated Imperial doctrine completely. Rebels were to be eliminated without exception, regardless of species or military status. Negative, Captain. All enemy personnel are designated for termination. The communication channel fell silent for nearly 30 seconds, an eternity during active combat operations. Understood, General. Be advised, the Edge has identified the source of the rebels' advanced weapons technology. You're going to want to see this. As the last rebel vessels fell silent within the nebula, Voskar realized that whatever Captain Cordell had discovered might change the entire nature of the Empire's expansion campaigns. The human vessel had just eliminated a force that would have required months of Imperial fleet operations to suppress, but the implications of their discovery would prove far more dangerous than any military victory. The debris field that had once been the rebel stronghold stretched across several cubic kilometers of space, twisted metal and crystalline fragments catching the nebula's ethereal light. General Voskar's shuttle approached the Phantom's Edge, which now hung motionless near the largest piece of wreckage, what had been the rebels' primary command station. The human vessel's energy signature has stabilized, reported pilot Zerion, his multiple arms adjusting approach vectors. But, General, the spatial distortion readings around their ship are unprecedented. Through the shuttle's viewports, Voskar could see that space itself seemed to bend around the Phantom's Edge, creating visual anomalies that made his eyes water. Whatever the vessel had done during the engagement, it had left reality slightly damaged in its vicinity. Docking permission granted. Captain Cordell's voice carried through the communication system. Fair warning, General. The Edge is still processing combat data. Her corridors might feel unsettled for a few hours. The shuttle's airlocks connected with an audible hiss, and Voskar stepped aboard the human vessel for the first time. The experience was immediately disorienting. The corridors seemed to pulse with organic rhythm, and the walls displayed patterns that shifted when observed directly. More disturbing, he could swear he heard whispers in languages his translator couldn't identify. Lieutenant Brennan met him at the airlock, the cybernetic implants along his skull glowing with increased activity. She's still excited from the engagement, he explained apologetically. The Edge doesn't get many opportunities to fully express her capabilities. Express her capabilities? The ship enjoys combat, General. It's what she was designed for, and 8 months of forced dormancy left her eager. Captain Cordell waited in what appeared to be the vessel's primary briefing room, though the space defied conventional geometry. Holographic displays showed tactical analyses of the recent engagement, but Vosakar's attention was drawn to a secured stasis pod in the corner. Inside, a figure in rebel uniform lay unconscious. Admiral Karstein Vex, Cordell announced, former commander of the rebel fleet and, more importantly, former Imperial Navy officer. Graduated from the Zerion Military Academy with honors, served with distinction for 15 years before defecting. Voskar studied the sleeping figure with growing unease. I know this being. He was reported killed in action during the Antarian campaign. Faked his death and joined the rebellion 2 years ago. But that's not the interesting part. Cordell activated additional displays showing weapons schematics and tactical data. Admiral Vex has been coordinating with human refugee settlements, sharing Imperial military intelligence in exchange for Terra's advanced weapons technology. The implications struck Voskar like a physical blow. The refugees have been reverse engineering Imperial systems? Better than that. They've been improving them. Lieutenant Brennan gestured toward technical specifications that made no sense according to established physics. Human military doctrine emphasizes adaptability and creative problem-solving. Give us your weapons designs, and we'll find 17 ways to make them more effective. The Rebel fleet's enhanced capabilities, human Imperial hybrid technology, Cordell confirmed. Your weapons, our targeting systems, your shields, our power distribution networks, your ships, our tactical coordination protocols, the refugees, have been systematically analyzing every aspect of Imperial military capability and finding weaknesses. Voskar felt his secondary heart skip beats as the full scope of the threat became clear. How many refugee settlements have access to this hybrid technology? According to Admiral Vex's intelligence files, 47 confirmed locations with an estimated total population of 12 million human survivors. Cordell's expression was carefully neutral. They've been building ships, General, not civilian transports, warships designed specifically to exploit Imperial tactical doctrine. The stasis pod containing Admiral Vex hummed quietly, and Voskar realized the rebel commander represented far more than just a military prize. The being possessed detailed knowledge of both Imperial and human military capabilities, information that could determine the outcome of the entire insurgency. What do you recommend, Captain? For the first time since their meeting on Grydian Prime, Cordell's professional facade slipped slightly. That depends on what kind of war your empire wants to fight, General. You can continue trying to suppress individual rebel cells while human refugees build an increasingly advanced fleet in the shadows. Or you can recognize that humanity represents a military asset your empire has never encountered before. We don't just fight, we evolve. Every engagement teaches us something new about our enemies, and we adapt faster than any species in recorded history. The Phantom's edge pulsed around them, her hybrid consciousness processing thousands of tactical scenarios simultaneously. In that moment, General Voskar understood that the rebellion had never been the real threat. The real threat was what would happen when 12 million human refugees decided to stop running and start hunting. Emperor Kethvul's crystalline claws scraped patterns of agitation across his obsidian throne as he absorbed General Voskar's report. The throne chamber's atmospheric processors struggled to manage the pheromones of rage radiating from the Imperial Sovereign, while holographic displays showed the scope of humanity's hidden fleet construction. 12 million survivors, the Emperor hissed, his 6 eyes fixed on tactical projections. Building warships designed specifically to counter Imperial doctrine, and you knew nothing of this? General Voskar maintained his position of submission, though his scales had shifted to the modeled pattern of extreme stress. Intelligence reports focused on the refugee settlement's agricultural and industrial development. Your Magnificence, their military capabilities were classified as negligible. Negligible. The word dripped with venomous sarcasm. They've constructed over 200 vessels capable of engaging Imperial cruisers, established manufacturing facilities in 17 star systems, and successfully coordinated with our own rebellious territories. Explain to me how this qualifies as negligible. Captain Cordell, flanked by 2 members of her crew, stood at the chamber's center with an expression of calculated neutrality. Her presence in the throne room violated dozens of Imperial protocols, but the intelligence she'd provided regarding human fleet capabilities had earned her an unprecedented audience. Captain Cordell, the Emperor's attention shifted to the human commander. Your species possesses a remarkable talent for survival and adaptation. It also appears to harbor significant hostility toward the empire that conquered your homeworld. With respect, Your Magnificence, Cordell's reply carried diplomatic courtesy that barely concealed harder emotions. The Empire didn't conquer Terra. You annihilated it. 12 billion human beings died in the space of 6 hours. The survivors aren't hostile. They're traumatized refugees trying to build new lives while processing genocidal loss. The Emperor's laugh was like breaking crystal. Traumatized refugees? Don't design warships optimized for asymmetric warfare against superior forces. They don't coordinate multi-system insurgencies or develop hybrid technologies that exceed their conquerors' capabilities. No, Cordell agreed, her voice hardening. But soldiers do, and your magnificence made a crucial error in your calculations. You assumed that destroying our homeworld would eliminate human military resistance. Instead, you concentrated the most experienced combat veterans from dozens of planetary defense forces into refugee settlements with unlimited motivation, and nothing left to lose. Lieutenant Brennan stepped forward, his cybernetic implants pulsing with data streams. The refugee fleets aren't planning conquest, Emperor. They're planning survival through deterrence. Every ship they build, every weapon they develop, every tactical innovation they implement. It's all designed to make the cost of future human extermination too high for the Empire to accept. General Vossakar's mandibles clicked nervously as he processed the implications. You're suggesting the refugees intend to create a military stalemate? I'm suggesting they intend to ensure that humanity never faces another Terra, Cordell replied. The refugee settlements are building something your empire has never encountered. A distributed military force with no fixed territory to defend, no central command structure to eliminate, and no strategic objectives beyond survival. Emperor Kethvul rose from his throne, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber. And what prevents me from ordering the complete elimination of every human settlement in known space? The same thing that prevented you from eliminating. The rebellion without outside assistance, Cordell answered calmly. Resources, time, and the mathematical reality of asymmetric warfare. You could probably destroy the refugee settlements, given sufficient commitment of forces. But while your fleets are engaged in genocide, how many other species would see an opportunity for independence? How many rebellions would spread while your military is scattered across 47 star systems? The chamber fell silent except for the atmospheric processor's rhythmic cycling. Emperor Kethvul's political calculations were visible in the shifting patterns of his scales, anger warring with pragmatic assessment of imperial vulnerabilities. What do you propose, Captain? A treaty, Cordell said simply. Official recognition of human refugee settlements as autonomous territories under imperial protection rather than imperial control. In exchange, human military expertise becomes available for suppressing actual threats to imperial stability. You would serve the empire that destroyed your homeworld? We would serve our own survival, which happens to align with imperial interests in maintaining stability. Cordell's smile held no warmth. The universe is full of species that would happily see both humanity and the empire destroyed. Sometimes former enemies become necessary allies. General Voskar found himself admitting the logic despite his instinctive resistance. The Phantom's Edge had eliminated the Kepler rebellion in hours rather than months, and the intelligence regarding hybrid technologies offered opportunities for enhancing imperial military capabilities. Emperor Kethvul's decision would determine whether humanity became the Empire's most dangerous enemy or its most valuable military asset. 6 months after the Treaty of Nexus Station was signed, General Vossakar stood on the command deck of the redesigned Inexorable Will, watching tactical displays that would have been impossible under previous Imperial doctrine. Human-designed holographic interfaces provided real-time analysis of fleet movements across 17 sectors, while hybrid targeting systems tracked over 3,000 individual vessels simultaneously. The Andromedian Collective's advance. Fleet has entered the Outer Rim, reported Navigation Officer Kenth, her scaled hands now operating controls that incorporated human ergonomic principles. 230 vessels, including 15 Dreadnought-class ships utilizing unknown propulsion technology. The Andromedians represented everything Emperor Kethvul had feared, an expansionist empire from outside the local galactic group, possessing technology that exceeded Imperial capabilities and a demonstrated willingness to exterminate rather than conquer existing civilizations. Human refugee response? Vossakar inquired. Captain Cordell's voice came through the enhanced communication system, transmitted from the Phantom's edge, positioned 3 light-years ahead of the main Imperial fleet. 47 vessels are moving to intercept, General. Mix of human-designed ships and hybrid Imperial human technology. The Edge has been analyzing Andromedian movement patterns for the past week. Assessment? They're good, Cordell admitted, her tone carrying professional respect for capable opponents. Better technology than the Empire in several key areas, excellent tactical coordination, and they've clearly studied our previous engagements. But they're making one crucial mistake. Which is? They're fighting like a conventional military force. Hierarchical command structure, predictable tactical doctrine, and they assume their technological advantages will translate directly into battlefield superiority. Lieutenant Brennan's voice joined the communication stream from his position aboard, the hybrid cruiser Terra's Vengeance. They haven't adapted to face an enemy that doesn't follow established patterns. Human refugee fleets don't operate like traditional navies. We learned to think like guerrillas during the months after Terra's destruction. Through the tactical display, Voskar watched as 47 human vessels moved into positions that defied conventional military logic. Instead of forming battle lines or defensive formations, they scattered throughout the contested system like seeds in fertile soil, each ship operating independently while somehow maintaining perfect coordination. Engagement commencing, Cordell reported. All vessels execute pattern Omega. What followed challenged every assumption Voskar had developed about space warfare during his 4 decades of military service. The human vessels didn't attack. The Andromedian fleet, they infected it. Moving through enemy formations like viruses through a bloodstream, human ships targeted command vessels, communication relays, and coordination systems rather than focusing on direct destruction. The Andromedians are losing fleet cohesion, Officer Kent observed with something approaching awe. Their individual vessels remain functional, but they're no longer operating as a coordinated force. Human tactical doctrine emphasizes disruption, over destruction when facing superior numbers, explained Dr. Nethys, who had spent months studying refugee military innovations. They turn the enemy's organizational advantages into vulnerabilities. The Phantom's edge appeared on sensors in the center of the Andromedian formation, her hybrid consciousness coordinating the refugee fleet's assault while simultaneously analyzing enemy responses in real time. Where Imperial forces would have sought decisive battle, the human vessels created chaos. Enemy ships firing on their own forces, command vessels losing contact with subordinate units, and tactical formations dissolving into individual survival struggles. General, Emperor Kethvul's voice cut through the tactical chatter, transmitted from the Imperial capital. Status report. The human refugee fleet has successfully neutralized Andromedian tactical coordination, Vossakar replied, his voice carrying a mixture of professional admiration and lingering unease. Enemy vessels are withdrawing in disorder, and their advance into Imperial territory has been halted. Casualties? Human losses. 3 vessels damaged, 0 destroyed. Andromedian losses? 17 vessels destroyed, 37 disabled, remainder retreating to regroup beyond sensor range. The communication channel fell silent for several seconds before the Emperor responded. General, transmit my compliments to Captain Cordell and her commanders. It appears our alliance has proven beneficial. As the Andromedian fleet disappeared into hyperspace, defeated not through superior firepower, but through tactical innovation that transformed their strengths into weaknesses, Vossakar found himself contemplating the strange turns of fate that had led to this moment. The Empire had sought to acquire human military assets to suppress a rebellion. Instead, they had gained allies whose greatest weapon wasn't advanced technology or superior numbers, but the ability to adapt, evolve, and transform any conflict into something their enemies couldn't comprehend. Captain Cordell's final transmission carried satisfaction and something deeper, the knowledge that humanity had found not just survival, but purpose in the vast darkness between the stars. General, the refugee settlements are ready to begin joint training exercises with Imperial forces. It's time to teach your people how to think like humans. In the aftermath of victory, Vossakar realized that the Treaty of Nexus Station had accomplished something unprecedented in Imperial history. It had created an alliance between former enemies that made both species stronger than either could have been alone. The humans had kept their promise. They had evolved, and in doing so, they had helped the Empire evolve as well. And in the depths of space, where new threats gathered beyond the edge of known territory, that evolution would prove to be humanity's greatest gift to a universe that desperately needed defenders willing to think beyond the boundaries of conventional warfare.